Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It is 9 o'clock, which means it's time for a Talk Magic. And today I am with somebody who is just, I want to say he's one of the best kept secrets in Magic, but he's not because everybody knows who he is now. He is absolutely incredible. He is, in my opinion, one of the cleverest and most innovative app developers in the world. He has been responsible for products like Cognito, the Maxim app that's coming out soon. He has managed at a very young age to get a job with Murphy's Magic developing apps. Like, this guy knows his stuff and then some. I am, of course, talking about the Wonder Kid himself, the one and only, the Robin to Lloyd Barnes' Batman. It is, of course, Joshua Riley. How you doing, man? You okay?
I'm doing all right. Yes, thank you. Thank you for the wonderful introduction.
It's true. You know, I've got to know you quite well because obviously I know Lloyd really well. And through Lloyd, we've met and we've chatted and we're working on projects together now as well through Murphy's, which is wonderful. And I'm here to tell everyone, you are a joy to work with. Like, you're an absolute joy. Like, I've met people in tech before and app developers and something, and you give them, you go to them with a question. And it's kind of like, can you do this? And they're like, they look for every reason and every problem as to why it can't be done. And you, every single time I come to you with something, it's like, yeah, I can do it. And I'll have a working prototype in 24 hours. And you're like, what? Like, it's a completely different attitude to a lot of what I've seen in the industry. Obviously, Josh, there's some incredible app developers out there, aren't there? You know, like, Mark and Jonathan, and the list goes on and on and on. But I mean, your attitude towards just taking projects on and turning them around so quickly, it's incredible, my friend. It really is.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's great. It's just mind-blowing. I got to say, you inspire me. Genuinely, you do.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it's been crazy the last couple of years.
Well, let's talk about. Would you mind if I broke down a little bit about what you've done and how you got into Magic? And because let's be honest, you're kind of living the dream job at the moment, aren't you? You're developing apps independently, but also you're doing stuff for Murphy's. A lot of people might not know, but you were the guy responsible for the updated Blackpool app. I mean, anybody who's anybody in this industry at the moment is using you. And you know that you're how old?
I'm 21.
That makes me sick. Like, I mean, it's just incredible what you've achieved at such a young age. So let's talk about this. How long have you been involved in Magic? What's your origin story? Where did it all start?
So I started Magic when I was about 7 or 8. So nearly about 15 years now. It was, back in school. It was actually my uncle that actually got me into Magic, showed me my first trick, and
Please tell me he pulled a coin from behind your ear.
I can't remember exactly what the trick was, annoyingly, but it was also it was my uncle, but then also Dynamo as well. So I started watching. It was around that time when Dynamo was on TV, so I started watching a lot of it, Dynamo. So that kind of got me into Magic. And actually, I think I fondly remember my first ever Magic trick was, I don't know if you know it, it's a card trick where it's like you have a card selected, and then you end up with 5 cards, and then you put it between your fingers, and you do a karate chop, and then the one card that is there.
Yes, another one.
It's the card that they selected.
A lot of people do it with a glide, don't they? So they say, "Is this your card? No. Is this your card? Is this your card?" Yeah, I've seen it. It's a good trick.
So that was my first ever card trick that I ever learned.
Wow.
So yeah, I know. And then my first ever Magic set, which was, I want to say it was around at the beginning of my career, at the beginning of getting into Magic, because I remember back in primary school, I used to perform this one trick all the time. You know, in the Magic sets, you've got the mind reading box where you have like a cube, you place it in the box, and you can instantly know. I used to perform that all the time in primary school, and it was weird because the way I got into magic, I kind of used it to as a way of making friends, because back when I was younger, I struggled making friends, and I kind of used magic as a way to communicate and start talking to people. Because over the years, I struggled a lot with bullying, especially through school, and I kind of use magic as like my safe haven. I can just distract myself from.
A lot of people do that, Josh. A lot of people kind of find magic. I did, to be honest. I was kind of the type of, when I got into magic when I was 18 and I was at uni, I just kept myself to myself. I found it very difficult to talk to people. I found it very difficult to, just like go to parties or do anything that anybody at uni did. And finding magic kind of gave me like a superpower. It was like that was my thing. It's like I had this, so I could do this, and nobody else could. And it was a way of people coming up to me and saying, "Hey, show me this thing." And it made me more popular than I could have been if I didn't have magic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so, yeah. But what's it? Well, so basically, because the school that I went to, it was a private school originally, so it went from like year reception all the way up to year 11, and it was so I was there for quite a few years. So I did start making friends, but it was halfway through year 10 when I found out that my school was getting shut down within the next couple of years. And so I had to make the decision. Well, my parents actually made the decision to actually switch schools. So I actually moved schools halfway through year 10. So all of these friends that I've made since like I joined in year 3, so I'd like made friends for like 7 years. I had to completely leave them all because even though I could have seen myself through, because I only had like I think it was going to shut down within like 3 years at that point, but because my sisters were all going to the same school, they wouldn't have been able to be seen through. So it made sense, and because we had to travel about 20 minutes every day to get to that school, so we all moved to a local school. So I had to start from scratch. I even took new GCSEs in my new school. So I was halfway through year 10 and had to do completely new. But I kind of think that as a blessing, because that was when I got to take my favorite GCSE, which was computer science. Because at my private school, I had to take, there wasn't an option for computer science. They didn't have any they didn't have any teachers that can do computer science. So I had to do GCSEs that I wasn't really interested in. I think I had to do like art, which I wasn't too fascinated about. I moved schools halfway through year 10 and got to take computer science. And I remember like literally, I think it was the first week of being because this was the first time that I'd actually been to a public school that I can remember. And obviously it's weird because my private school that I went to had 200 in the entire school, whereas the public school that I went to had 200 in the entire year. So it was a big difference for me. So it was a bit nervous. But I remember the first week, this was the first week that I was at the school, and this was the first time that I kind of knew that I can do magic. So during the breaks, I would go out and try and perform a bit of magic. And there was at some stages where I'd literally have crowds and crowds of students all like packed around me.
Wow.
And I was showing magic. I think most I've had probably about 30 or 50 people just like all gathering around me. it was so many that made teachers come up to see what was going on, thinking that there was like a fight going on, because there was just so many people just crowding around me, and I was getting
Wow.
like crazy reactions. And it was like, it was there was some stages where it was hard to get to my lessons because there was so many people that I was at that stage. I was trying to get to like, I was trying to be a good person, trying to get to like lessons on time. And so I was like performing magic, and it was like everyone was kept talking to me, making me, and then and it ended up making me late for a few lessons because, but yeah, it was a nice feeling to perform, to see how many people were actually interested, coming from when I was in my private school where I was doing it to just a few people, and I think they kind of got bored over the years because I kept performing magic to them all the time for like 7 years, whereas like the public school had like almost like a new identity. So I was like, it was cool. Yeah, it was almost like a fresh start that I can just learn how to perform magic again, how to perform magic, and like learning reactions and like completely new reactions as well. So it was quite nice to perform in front of a new crowd, and it was because there was so many students. It was like almost every time that I perform, I'll be performing to new people. So it's like getting like the best reaction every time.
And I imagine like going into a new school of that size halfway through year 10, where everybody's already established friendships and so on and so forth, it could have been very difficult. It sounds like it was magic that really kind of put you into a situation where you're accepted almost immediately, which is amazing.
It was it was nice to have magic as like my like superpower that I can work with. And it was literally so yeah, I got through school fine. I did have a bit of bullying, but I had to live with that, unfortunately. But it was at the end of I think it was around the time that I left secondary school that I decided I really love magic. And this was when I decided to join the Young Magicians Club. So I was actually a member of the Young Magicians Club for, I think it was around about the age of 16. So I only had 2 years. But looking back at it now, I kind of regretted that I joined so late on, and I wish I'd actually joined a lot earlier, because I loved going to the magic the magic circle every once a Saturday. So once a month, it was amazing just being in that building. And
what was your goal at that time? So you've left school, you've joined the Young Magicians Club, you've found that you really like computer science. Was at that point were you thinking, well, you know what, magic could be a source of income for me, I could be a performer, it could be a career? Or was it just like a hobby that you love doing that you didn't think would lead to anything?
So magic was, at that time, it was more of a hobby, because the issue that I also struggled with was confidence. So I struggle quite, even now, struggle with performing and having the confidence to like walk up to someone and say, do you want to see a magic trick? So that was kind of so magic at that time was almost on a back burner for me. And it was at that time when I decided to pursue more of like the technology side of like computer science. So so at college, I actually took game development as a GCSE. So I started doing game development also at an early age as well. But it was later on when I was doing college that I found out that I kind of wasn't too interested in doing game development as a career. And it was, in fact, that I was more interested in the technology. So because I was doing a technology course like game development, and I got to be immersed with all kinds of like technology, like VR and like motion capture suits, like all sorts of like technology that I was very passionate about. So that's why I kind of stayed on to try and do the course, because I get to spend every day just playing around with technology. And before I started on that course, I'll give a bit of background that I was playing around with game development softwares back in I want to say year 7. I remember like I was doing playing with Scratch. I don't know if you heard of Scratch. It's like a online game platform, game development platform. It's quite popular. Okay. It's completely free, but so I was playing around with Scratch, just making games, and yes, that's when I started doing the course. But it was also that time. It was around that time when I started, developing my skills, doing development, all kinds of development, playing around with online like softwares that can create websites, and I was making basic apps as well. But obviously, I still had that passion for Magic as well, and it was around. It was just around after college. I think it was 2019. After college, it was about 2019 when I started getting into Magic apps like properly.
Getting into them as in learning how to create them, or getting into them as in.
It was more. I think it was more about actually buying and using Magic apps. So at this point, it was when I was like first introduced roughly to Magic apps like properly, and started using them like just as a hobby to friends and family. And it was at that time when I started to use Facebook as like a way to. I started in the Facebook Magic community on Facebook. So it was that time when I found out about the late Mac. I can't pronounce his surname, but Max Course.
Yes. He rest in peace. He developed a lot of apps over the years. Yeah.
And I found
Kraus from memory, maybe.
Kraus,
I don't know.
Yeah. So he had a Facebook group for Magic apps, and after I found out that he sadly passed away, me and a friend decided in his legacy, Alexander McClare, decided to create a new Facebook group for Magic apps, which we now call the Magic apps group, where we all share like the latest Magic apps, and that kind of has blown up over the last couple of years. But at that time I still wasn't into doing Magic app development, because after college I just found a job completely unrelated to any of my passions. But it wasn't until COVID hit when my job came to an end, not because of COVID, but because of something completely unrelated. And I ended up being unemployed just at the start of the COVID pandemic. So COVID almost, I know for a sad time for a lot of people, it gave me a time to have like a fresh restart. So it gave me the like 2 years to kind of think, where do I want my life to go? What path do I want to take? What career do I want to go on? And it was at that time when I released my first Magic app. My first proper Magic app was just before COVID hit.
What was that?
That was called UPS. Well, it actually originally was called Prediction Card. So Prediction Card was it was so simple. It's literally just an app that takes information from Inject, and it just displays it on like a card that you can just tap, and it will just like animate turning over, predicting what spectators search for. It was so simple at that time. But yeah, that was my first kind of proper Magic app. But then a few months after that released, I unfortunately found out that it actually got pirated.
Oh man.
Yeah, so it got pirated, and that kind of gave me the push to think, do you know what, I'm not going to sit here and just let them take over, take my Magic app and sell it on themselves. But it made me want to actually completely rebuild the app from the ground up and just keep like making so many updates that the pirate people will struggle to like crack each update every time. So I kind of, it gave me the energy to just completely like devoted quite a bit of time creating this prediction card, and it ended up being renamed to UPS, which like stands for the Ultimate Prediction System. And at that time, it was, yeah, it ended up being like almost like a beast of a Magic app, and it's probably one of my proudest creations to date, because I kind of use it as like a playground for concepts I come up with over the years to try and create like a single Magic app that I can. It also ended up being like underground as well, so I struggled promoting it as well because it was such a big app. There was like over 30 different modes. You could do like probably about 50 different effects in like one.
I know people are going to ask this. Is this still available?
It is still available. The issue that I have is the instructions, because there's so many effects that the app can do. It's been hard. Like the instructions, just to give an example, are I think last time I checked, the instructions were over 4 hours long.
Wow,
4
sounds
hours.
like my projects.
Yeah, it's and I had a look yesterday to see that the app itself. I know this is crazy. This is such a big number to think about, but the app over I think it's been 2 years since I created it, I've written over 750,000 lines of code. It kind of blew me away when I looked at that number last night.
Wow,
I know it was a lot.
That's incredible. And that actually, one of the things, I listen to what a lot of people say, and I read a lot on the channel, especially when I talk about apps. There's a subsection of the Magic community that are kind of against apps. And one of the reasons that are against them is because they say, well, if I buy this app and it doesn't get updated and it stops working when the latest iOS upgrade comes out or whatever it may be, I've basically flushed the money down the toilet. If I buy a card trick, I own that card trick. I'm not relying on somebody else updating it. Now, I know that people like you and Mark Kirstein are very passionate about any app that you bring out, constantly making it the best it can be. But then you have like things that happened last year, like Illusionists pulling support for their apps immediately and just going, well, you've had your money. Thanks. See you later. Bye. And it kind of makes people nervous. Do you think it's an issue? And what responsibility do you think app developers should have once they've taken people's money?
Yes. So I went a different approach with UPS when it comes to app support. So the way, so basically the main issue with Magic apps is mostly keeping the interface. So if you're replicating, like say Apple's UI for say like a calculator or the clocks app, for example, you need to and you're doing it the way that most people will think about doing it is just completely replicating the UI. And if say like next year Apple decides to change the interface, you've got to do an update to update the UI. And the problem with that is that obviously takes time out of your day to do that update every year, which can be a nightmare for some. But so what I did differently with UPS is I actually work with screenshots. So essentially with UPS, all the users got to do is take a screenshot of their app and then they just put it into the app. So if every year they do an app update, all they've got to do is just take a new screenshot. So I don't have to change the interface my end. they've just got to just update a screenshot in the app, and it will just, yeah, it updates every year, obviously, because they can do the screenshot. So yeah, that's kind of how I managed the updates, if there are any. But I also like to, I also take time in, well, but it was back then when I was working with just a few hundred app users of my apps. So at that time I can manage them quite well, and I would take a lot of time. I think I'm kind of known for it in that group, that back then I would just take a lot of time doing like one-on-one support for each user if they have any questions. Like I was like, back then I was like available like all the time via message on Facebook, and yeah, just kind of like helping out anywhere I can with support. But yeah, it was back then when I kind of had the passion for making apps for magicians, and it was, and obviously COVID hit, and I was like stuck at home, and that was when I was kind of thinking, where could my life go after COVID? Like, will I go back to a normal day job, or will I go and start performing magic, or will I do app development? And it was at that point when I got contacted by a fairly well-known magician, and it was at that time when I saw the message come through on Facebook, and I actually took a double take, because I was like, oh my God, is this actually real? Is this person actually contacting me? And it was, and it was Pearlman from
Wow.
yeah. So he got in contact with me because he actually wanted some private app development done. So he was actually my first ever proper Magic App client.
Wow.
So it's quite crazy that, yeah, my first ever proper client was like someone that I look up to, and Otis Pearlman, and it was the first time that I created private magic apps for people, and yeah, I've done quite a few projects with him over the years, and I did quite a few projects over the year of 2020, and then it was at the beginning of 2021 when I got a few, that O's referred me to a few more clients as well, and I started picking up clients, quite a few clients that I had that were doing that hired me to do like private projects, and then work kind of slowed down.
Okay.
And
so were you thinking at this point, this could be an actual career for me? I've got these clients coming in, I've got people using my services to create apps, I can create my own apps. Obviously you made money off UPS. This could be a way to go instead of going back to a normal job. That's where you were kind of at this point, right?
Yeah. So I did. Yeah. So at that point, I was like, yeah, this is. And I was making quite a bit of money at that time. So I was like, and it was all in a short period of time. And I was thinking like, oh my God, this actually could make me quite a bit of money, and I could do this as a full time. But then it was literally only like a few months after I got my first clients in 2021, the new clients, that work slowed down, and I was kind of struggling to keep up the workload. And it was at that time when I decided to think about doing app development, not magic, but for businesses. So I actually joined a group called BNI, which obviously, if no one knows, it stands for Business Network International. It's a network.
I was in BNI years. Yeah.
Yeah. So I joined BNI for it was roughly the first couple of months of 2021, and I decided to do it more for trying to get well, it was actually at that time when at the beginning of joining BNI, it was like half and half. I either wanted to do I wanted to promote myself that I do apps for businesses, but then I also kind of had to try and promote that I do apps for magicians as well, but not obviously because it's a public networking group. I had to be careful, and you know, I kind of never knew if anyone in my group that would actually know any magicians that might be interested. It was actually quite crazy because that did end up happening. I did actually get contacted by a magician from my networking group.
Wow.
But unfortunately that never came to fruition, but it at the moment, but it was quite crazy that like my two worlds collided at that time. But so so it was that time when I did BNI that I wanted to do some public business apps, but then I found that it was quite hard to create. It's quite hard to create apps for businesses because there was a lot of legal stuff, things that need to be done to make sure that you're legitimate and as a business, and like data protection and all this kind of things. It was like it kind of got very overwhelming, that and I kind of came to the conclusion that I wasn't quite ready for doing apps for businesses. So that kind of went on the back burner as well. And I actually ended up leaving BNI just a few months after I actually started because I found out that I wasn't ready for it. And then I got in contact with an amazing guy called Paul Longhurst just after BNI, after I left BNI. And for those that don't know, Paul Longhurst, he created in the Magic App world, he created the clock face input method, which is used in now quite a lot of Magic Apps for doing like Bluetooth swipe input. And in the summer of 2021, I created my first. I did my first Magic App collab with Paul, and we created an app, a magic tool called Portal. And basically, Portal allows you to create, and it's a fake Google search page where you can house all of your Magic App links into a single page. So, like for example, Inject or Wikitest, you can create a single page that has search results that look like legitimate, and when you click it, instead of going to the real Google search page, it goes to your a real Google a real website. It goes to your fake website. So it's kind of like a way to it's like basically one page to house all of your links. So instead of having to remember all these different Magic App links, you just have to remember one, and then the app will just the website will just show you which ones you, and it's obviously covert as well.
Yeah, that's a clever idea.
So that was our first app release together. That release did quite well actually, and it got me quite a lot of recognition for myself. And then after the success of Portal, me and Paul decided to work on another app idea, which ended up being Instaprime.
And I have here on my phone.
Instaprime. Yes.
There it is.
Yeah. So Instaprime, that app caused a chain of events that completely changed my life for the better. And so when Instaprime got released, it started doing quite well, but it got even better when David Penn got in contact with me, and he very kindly offered to review it on his review show. And it was from that review show that I ended up getting contacted by all of these amazing companies. So, for example, I got contacted by the Magic Circle, who offered for me to do some work for them, and I ended up getting my dream, which was actually being a member of the Magic Circle. So that was incredible. And then I got contacted by Lloyd Barnes at that time from Murphy's Magic to work on a project, which, although never came to fruition, it was actually a few weeks after I started that project that he contacted me about another project, which I immediately jumped on and helped develop, and that ended up being Cognito. So, wow. Which obviously was one of the best-selling Magic apps of 2021. And it was a big, and it was a bit crazy with Cognito, because it was at that time. It was the first kind of app that I actually worked on for the larger app community, app audience. So, for example, like when I was working on Instaprime or UPS or Portal, I was working with, like, say 200-300 users at most. Whereas when I work with Cognito, I'm working with a much larger audience. So I was having to manage, along with Lloyd and the Murphy's team, we were all having to manage such a big audience, such a big user base, and there was so many hurdles that we had to overcome, including the app actually got taken off of the entire app store, which not many people actually realize. And it was about 2 weeks. It was literally 2 weeks of a lot of stress, working day and night, trying to work with the app store to try and get that back on the app store. And that was a bit of a nightmare. But the main challenge, which I touched on earlier, the main challenge that we had to face was actually making the process as streamlined as possible, from when the user first purchases the app, to downloading the app, and then also learning the app as well, which I know a lot of developers, some do a good job on, some do try to do the minimum, but you kind of need to be good at explaining how the app works. But then also the challenge with that is, if you do any updates, you've got to keep updating the explanation video. And I think going forwards, we're going to try and focus a lot on making explanation videos more modular, which I kind of started with UPS, doing it more modular, because when with UPS, because there's so many things that you can do with it, I decided making one video every time, and if you do any changes, you've got to re-render the entire video and the explanation video every time. I decided to just split it up into chapters, so that just touch on each, have a video touching on each different concept in the app, which, although we kind of did partly with Cognito, it still wasn't the best, because we ended up making quite a few changes, and I kind of got carried away with doing quite a few features as well, and it was a learning curve, because at that time, like I said, at that time we had such a big user base. They were all they were trying to all learn how to use the app, and although we tried, we all Lloyd obviously did amazing job at doing the instructions, but I think as a whole we all struggled because when we were doing updates, trying to teach the new updates, and we're using the Facebook group. I remember we were posting videos every time for each update, and because the Facebook group was massive, we had so many users in there posting every day. A lot of the update videos got lost in the Facebook group. So we would end up getting messages from people saying, "Oh, how do you do this?" And I'll just tag them in the post that they missed in the group. So yeah, that was yeah. So Cognito was the first time that I got that I had to properly that I had properly to understand how big the Magic app world is, and yeah, actually properly making a big release like Cognito.
Well, was it also the first time that you met Lloyd when you were working on Cognito? Was that the first time you met Lloyd?
So it was the first time that I actually properly communicated with Lloyd, but I'd met him at conventions years prior. So, like for example, my first ever Magic convention was the Blackpool Magic Convention. It was 2018 was the first time that I went to a Magic convention, which was Blackpool, and then so that I think it was that time when I first saw Lloyd around in person, and then I decided in 2019 to do the session convention, just changing things up, and then 2020 I went back to Blackpool, and I also did I can't remember if I did session as well. No, I didn't do session. So I did Blackpool again. So yeah, it was, and Blackpool always holds a special place because that's my first time that I actually went to a convention. Obviously, it's the world's largest Magic convention, and it was actually after the release of Cognito that I was contacted by Russ Stevens, who, if people don't know, is actually one of the people behind the planning of the entire convention. And he got in contact because he asked me to if I could create the convention app for the convention,
which is a really big deal.
Yeah, that was a big deal for me because that got me a whole lot more recognition to thousands of magicians that will be using the app daily at the convention. So yeah, I ended up doing that app, which it was amazing. But then literally it was then the moment that actually truly changed my life was actually 2 days before my 21st birthday. It was the 27th of January this year when I was offered my dream job, which was a full-time position at Murphy's. So I actually started, I got offered the role of in-house app developer. And that was a moment that made me realize that all of this work had truly paid off. And I now get the opportunity to work with all my favorite magicians and magic creators, and I get to combine my two favorite passions, which is app development and magic. And
well, I want to talk to you more about the Murphys thing, but let me ask you a question, because this is a question that comes up on my channel and all the time, and I think you'll know the answer. What's the difference between a creator and a developer? So, like, take Cognito, for example. Lloyd created Cognito, but you developed it. So what's the distinction?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll be honest that over the last couple of months, I've been trying to grasp the idea of creator as well. And actually, I'll be honest that there have been a few conversations I've had with Lloyd, where with app releases that I've been like, can I be a creator for this instead of developer? And he was like, well, no, because the idea, because he kind of gave me the a good analogy of what creator actually is, which is a creator is the one that has the idea initially, and that comes up with the initial idea. But to be a co-creator, you need to take that initial idea and make it substantially different to the original, so that it can be very hard to compare the two. So if I added like a few ideas, so for example, some of the ideas that I had with Cognito was like having an API so that you can integrate with other apps. Although such a small feature, it wasn't enough to make it substantially different to the original idea. So that's when I ended up being a developer. So a lot of the apps going forwards I'll most likely be just a developer for, but there are some apps that I'm working on that are my ideas.
Okay.
That will be released in due course.
Okay, that's cool. That's it. So has work, and I want to talk about how you got the job at Murphy's, but before I do, has working at Murphy's meant that you can't take outside work on? You know, because you've talked about working with O's Pearlman, working with these various different people. Is it now a case that kind of everything that you're developing is going through Murphy's?
So yes and no. So when I signed on with Murphy's, this was a risk that I was willing to take. Because when I signed on with Murphy's, I signed an exclusivity deal. So essentially, I can only create. So I can still create private apps for other magicians. So I'm still available to make apps for other magicians, but they have to be exclusive to themselves. They can only be the only ones that perform it. Whereas if they want to sell the trick, then it would need to be released through Murphy's. And it was a big risk for me at that time to take on, to accept that job offer and accept that deal. And the reason that I ended up taking that offer is because at that time, although Cognito got me a whole lot of recognition, I decided to take on the role because I wanted to use Murphy's as a platform over the next couple of years to gain recognition and also to gain recognition, and I can't think of the word.
So the
yes,
kind of,
to know who I am, but also make a reputation for myself. I want to have a good reputation as well, so that I can create apps and have a good name attached to it, to have my name attached to it. And because over the years I have struggled mostly because the issue with magic apps, and it's the same with magic tricks as well, is trying not to step on other people's toes with like ideas and concepts and features. So it's been hard, especially in the magic app world, to work out what features and things that are allowed to be shared between other apps, or which features of other apps that they want to keep for themselves. And I've had my fair share of unfortunately stepping on people's toes without realizing, and there have been a few issues that I've had with other developers. But so I kind of wanted, so that was the reason why I kind of wanted to go with Murphy's as well, because I'm not so I can have more guidance when it comes to not stepping on, trying not to step on other people's toes, and start learning that the whole ethics behind magic, and making sure that the apps that I produce, that I develop, are original.
Well, how are you meant to know that, like that? Like in magic, for example, if I'm creating a trick and I'm using a concept that I've seen somewhere else, I'll know if that's being used elsewhere, if it's public domain, if it's not public domain. But like, how do you know the difference? So, for example, one of the first magic apps that I ever kind of bought, not the first, but one of the first that I really, really liked, was was it Top Talk or something by Angelo Carbone, which was that text messaging thing where somebody would and the input method was using the lock screen and using that lock screen to input the card that you needed to have text over to you. Since then, I've seen so many apps use that same input system. You talked about Paul's clock face input system, which I've seen in so many different apps. So when is it that a feature of an app like those two input methods that I talked about, when is it that that's allowed to be used and it's not frowned upon, versus something that somebody's done where if you tried to use that, you would get shot down in flames? It sounds like it's a very tricky path to navigate.
It is very tricky. So the issue so the reason when I first started actually making magic apps, it was that point when I kind of knew that the lock screen had been lock screen input had been used in loads of different magic apps. So it was at that time when I kind of thought that it was public domain, but I don't actually know if it is or not. It was actually I'll be honest, it was actually later on that I found out that it was actually Angelo Carbone that actually first had that idea. But yeah, so it's very difficult to try and work out which features have been done before, and who owns it, and also if they're willing to make it in the public domain. Yeah, it's a very, very, very tricky path to but yeah, but it's also making sure to credit as well. So even if they do give permission, it's always good to credit who, if you know who created these features originally, especially when it comes to the magic apps. But
yeah, it sounds like a difficult thing.
It is, yeah.
And did you get the job at Murphy's because of the work that you'd done with Cognito? They saw, because Murphy's Cognito was their first app that they were developing in-house themselves. And since then, it looks from the outside looking in that they're really wanting to push that app side of things. Like we know about Maxim because Lloyd's talked about it. I'm developing, well, not developing, I couldn't develop my way about paper bag, mate, but I'm working with you and Murphy's on an app myself, which has been an amazing experience. And I know that you're working with other people as well. And Murphy's like really pushing the app side of the what they do, and that's why they got you involved.
So yeah, when I actually first started with Cognito, it was literally it was just before I started actually working on developing the app that I was contacted by when Lloyd first contacted me. He kind of said that if you do this and you do well and you do like little bits with Murphy's, there could be a potential of getting a job, because it was at that time when they first it was at that time when they kind of told me that the reason why they brought on Lloyd is to actually start doing magic apps. So for example, Cognito was actually one of the first magic apps that Lloyd created for obviously Murphy's, and it's obviously the first ever Murphy's magic app. And the reason why they brought on Lloyd was to try and get the push in the magic app world. And I was quite fortunate to have started with Cognito at a good time, because they didn't have any developer that can actually create apps, even just normal apps, let alone a developer that has the knowledge as a magician to create apps for magicians, so magic apps. So it was quite a good time for me to get my foot in the door with Murphy's, because that was kind of when I got that was kind of what helped spur me on to do these little things with Murphy, work on a few projects, and yeah, that was kind of how I got the job.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's absolutely amazing. And so, yeah, you just said it before. You got your dream job. You're living your dream life. I follow you on Facebook, a lot, and you seem to be living like the perfect life, like the best life. Like you've just spent the last month around America, then you came back, then you went back over to America to Magic Live. You hang out at Blackpool. I'm willing to bet you're going to the session. Like you seem to be the guy that's just going to all the magic conventions. Like for somebody who, like you said, you're only 21. A few years ago, you were doing a computer course at a game design course at college. Fast forward 3 or 4 years, you're jet setting around the world. You go into every magic convention. You're doing what you absolutely love to do. You're working with some of the biggest names in magic, the biggest magic wholesale company in the world on exclusivity contracts. Life must be good for Joshua Riley, right?
Yeah, it is. It's that when I first started going to conventions, it was quite at that time. Obviously, I had a normal job, so it was quite difficult to pay for obviously pay for these conventions. So I had to pick and choose which ones I could go to. Whereas fast forward to now, I'm in a comfortable position with obviously working for Murphy's, that I'm able to go on these, like for example, Magic Live. That was a dream convention of mine for years to go to that, and that was the first time. That was actually my first international magic convention that I went to, and I'm just fortunate enough to have been able to afford to go to that. And I mean, like that is probably I want to say that convention is probably one of my favorite out of all of the conventions I've ever been to. That one, it sticks out in my mind just more for me. I enjoyed the most just seeing all the names walking around. Like I do the sort of like you got like David Copperfield over there, and like Shin Lim, and all the Vegas headliners just like walking around the convention. It's just amazing just to be in like the same dealers hall as all of these people that you look up to. So for me, Magic Live is probably one of my favorite. So like this year, because of obviously now getting a reliable income with Murphy's, I decided to try and see how many conventions that I can do in 1 year. So obviously I've did Blackpool, Magic Live, I'm doing the session, and then I've also got the London Magic Convention as well in the year. So I was tempted to do FISM as well, but and that's not a convention really. But I kind of wanted to try and immerse myself as much as I could, and go into as many conventions as I can. So yeah, it's amazing.
That's fantastic. That's great. So what are your goals for the future moving forward? Like you're only 21, you're very young. You said that you're, using Murphy's as a platform in some respects to get more notoriety. What goals do you have? What goals are on your magical bucket list over the coming weeks, months, years that you want to achieve? And you talked originally about being a performer. Is that still something that you want to do, or have you found your niche within magic, which is kind of the more of the cue to, like the James Bond, when you're not the guy going out there using the secret gadgets, but you're the guy behind the scenes making the secret gadgets to be used?
Yeah. So well, I mean, one of my biggest goals, which I'll get there eventually, hopefully, is to create magic for like the Vegas headliners. I would love to create apps, magic apps that they can use in their shows, or even just doing something that I've kind of been thinking about recently that I kind of want to start getting into potentially is just generic technology magic consultant. So consulting with like magic and technology, and like coming up with routines using like magic products, and like working on like TV and for shows as well. Just kind of coming up with doing consulting, coming up with like routines that they can perform. So I would still kind of want to be in the behind the scenes. I don't think I'll be. I think it'll probably take me a good few years to build up the confidence to actually go out and perform myself. So I kind of think that for the next couple of years, I'll probably still stay behind the scenes as a consultant, or being a magic app developer for other magicians, or making apps or Murphy's.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And a couple of more questions before we wrap things up, Josh. So the first one is, if somebody's watching this and they have an idea for an app that they want to develop to sell for magicians, and they think that Murphy's is the platform that they could use to do this, how would they go about this? Would they be contacting Murphy's directly? Is it good to contact you? You've just mentioned Lloyd got brought in to help develop more apps. Is it Lloyd that they should contact? If somebody's got a really good idea, they think it's unique, they don't really know how to make it themselves, but they think it's a really good idea, what process should they go through?
Probably the best way to do it is to either contact me or Lloyd, or probably me, because obviously I have the knowledge as well with Magic Apps. I know Lloyd's quite busy with other projects. He's not just doing Magic Apps and Murphy's. Or if I'm not available to message, then I believe there is a page on the website that you can submit a trick. If you've got an idea for the trick, or if you've got an idea, then maybe a video just explaining the idea, or we can jump on a call, or if you've actually got a prototype for the app, then you can make a performance video that you can then post, do like an unlisted video on YouTube that you can just send the link to us, and then we can have a look. And then it's basically just the creative team in Murphy's. They're the ones that kind of decide. So it's like me, Lloyd, and a few others that decide if it's worth pursuing, and then we'll get in contact with them and start getting contracts signed, and we'll look at developing it.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Okay, and I know you probably can't tell us much, but I'm guessing that there's quite a few exciting apps that you're working on over the coming months that will be hitting the market shelves. We obviously know about Cognito, which everyone knows I love. Maxim is coming out very, very soon, which I have a advanced copy of my phone, and that's great. I'm a huge fan of Maxim. It's killer. Anything else coming out in the distant future? You don't have to.
I won't say names, but we've got. I will say that because it's been quite a few months since the last app release. Obviously, the last app release was October, so during there's been quite a few hurdles. There's been quite a few delays with apps, and during the last couple of months, we've been hard at work coming up with app ideas, and we've got. I want to say we've got probably about 8 or 9 apps in the backlog, ready to be released. So we've got a good year or two of apps that each one are quite amazing, and there are a few that has a good potential of being app of the year. So be on the lookout for them.
That's exciting stuff. That's really, really exciting stuff.
Yeah. And there are some that are going to be mine, like I said, so which is even more exciting.
That's great. That's exciting. That's amazing, Josh. And what would you say to people before we wrap this whole interview up? What would you say to people that go, "Oh, I don't use apps because it's not very good, because everybody's going to know that it's got something to do with the technology on the phone. I'm going to stick to sleight of hand." What do you think about that? Because I completely disagree. My attitude is the reason that we started doing magic with silk handkerchiefs is because 100 years ago, everyone had a silk handkerchief in their pocket that they could borrow from somebody. The reason we started doing magic with cigarettes is because 50 years ago, everybody smoked cigarettes. The best magic is when you can borrow something or take something off somebody, and you have to move with the times. Nobody carries around cigarettes anymore with them. Nobody carries a silk handkerchief in their pocket. But you damn well know that every single person that's walking around is going to have some sort of mobile phone in their pockets. Why wouldn't you do something that involves something that's so precious to so many people? That's my viewpoint, but I'd love to know what you think.
Yeah, so for me, it was quite interesting. It was actually Lloyd that kind of, when I first started with Cognito, Lloyd gave a good reasoning. for Magic Apps is to try and create an app, a Magic app that obviously doesn't look like an app, like a special app. So, for example, with Cognito, that's just replicating the photo gallery, so it kind of looks just like normal photo gallery. And then another way is to try and eliminate the use of the phone as much as possible. So trying to so that the spectator doesn't think that the phone is the method. So you're trying to get away, trying to get as far away as possible from the phone. So, for example, with Maxim, Maxim doesn't seem like a Magic app because it's more almost like an assistant.
Yeah.
So you have it in your phone, you have it in your pocket. So you can do it completely hands off, where the phone is in your pocket, and you don't even need to have your phone out in play. So it's almost like it's still a Magic app, but to the spectator, they don't see a phone in sight. It's just a deck of cards.
No.
So it's kind of, you kind of want to, going forwards, you kind of want to make a Magic app that doesn't look like a Magic app as much as possible. I know because it's going to get harder to create. It's going to get harder to actually create Magic apps that look like Magic apps, because a lot more people, as technology progresses, a lot more people are going to start to understand that phones are clever now, and they're going to start to grasp the idea that there could be Magic as an app. It could be an app that can do Magic. So you kind of want to, it's kind of now or never to keep going with making Magic apps, to try and make it as more, make the method as far away as possible from a phone.
Yeah, I totally agree. Completely agree. I think about some of the really old apps from times gone by, where there was a picture of a deck of cards and one card rose up out the card that they named. Kind of just thinking, well, everybody knows that that's got something to do with the app. But you're right, things like Cognito, things like Wikitest, things like that, you wouldn't even think that there was a phone in play.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, perfect. That's amazing. Okay, well, that's great. This has been a wonderful interview, and more importantly, Josh, congratulations on everything you've achieved. 21 years old, living the dream. This is exciting stuff, and I've got to know you fairly well over the last year, and I know that you're very ambitious, you're very driven, and you've got big goals that you want to hit, and I can't wait to see what you do in the coming weeks, months, and years, because I think that as big a name as you are in Magic right now, you're going to become an even bigger name. And, if you could go back to 2018, when you went to your first Blackpool Magic convention and you walked in and nobody knew who you were, and you had a normal job, and you just walked around and you were kind of completely bowled over by the Blackpool Magic convention. And then you fast forward to now, just coming back to Magic Live, everybody knows who you are. You hang out with some of the best names in Magic, and, you help them develop their ideas. I mean, wow. Look at how things have gone in 4 years, man. I bet sometimes you have to pinch yourself.
Yeah, I do. It's been a roller coaster ride. And I'm all here for it. It's been incredible experience.
That's amazing. If people want to reach out to you and communicate with you, what's the best bet? Is it Instagram? Is it
Facebook?
Facebook. Okay.
Yes.
Search for Joshua O'Reilly on Facebook.
Yeah.
Send a message over, say hi, send a connection request. That's all they need to do, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. That's awesome. And obviously, if you haven't already done so, go visit your group as well, your app group.
Yeah. Magic Apps group, Facebook.
The Magic Apps group. Go and join that. Go and check out the Cognito group. If you haven't already got Cognito, it's incredible. Go check that out. And there's a group for Maxim now as well, isn't there? Even though it's not out.
Yes. There's a group for Maxim. Yes.
So go check that out as well. Go check out all of Josh's work. And Josh, one more time, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries.
Guys, do me a favor, leave a comment down below. I'm sure Josh will see it. Let him know what you think of the video. Show him some love. He's the guy responsible for a lot of the apps that we really enjoy using on a day-to-day basis. So show him some love. I'll be back again soon with another video. But thanks very much for watching. On behalf of Joshua O'Reilly, my name's Craig from Magic TV.